Welcome to another amazing live session. Today we're going to talk about teaching English to students with dyslexia, and our guest speaker is Boelo van der Pol. We are going to introduce him in just a moment. First of all, here I am, Paulina Węglowski, your usual presenter and host of these amazing live sessions. It's very good to see you again. Don't forget that throughout the session, you can ask your questions in the chat and we will try to answer them as quickly as possible and address any kind of questions you have. For those of you who are joining in for the first time and haven't seen Amazing Lives before or don't know what Amazy.uk is, let me tell you just a few words. Amazy is a workspace for modern educators, which allows you to create, share, and generate fantastic, modern, interactive, and customizable resources. You can share them with your students or with other teachers. You can easily track progress because everything is automated. And you can even create online libraries that you share with particular teachers, which is a fantastic tool for schools and educational institutions. If you're interested to learn more about Amazy, we are hosting an interesting webinar for those who just want to familiarize themselves with how everything works and what kind of tools we have and how to use them all. On Monday at 5:30 Central European Time with Nick Peachy, you can scan the QR code and register for this webinar. It's going to be a 45-minute to 1 hour webinar where we're going to showcase everything that Amazy has to offer. Okay, so back to us now. Let me introduce our speaker today. So Boelo van der Pol is a Dutch language teacher. He has more than 30 years of international experience, and he has been working with students with dyslexia and coaching teachers who work with students with dyslexia for over 8 years. He has done extensive research on this topic, and he is a teacher trainer and himself a trilingual dyslexic himself. He has helped more than 150 learners, and he also serves on dyslexia and language coaching boards. So let's welcome Boelo. Hello.
Hi, Paulina. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good. Sitting outside in
Yes.
sunny south of Spain.
Yes, we are all very jealous already.
Yes, I know. I always say I might be Dutch, but I'm not stupid, so I moved to Spain.
Well, what does this say about me? Because I am in the Netherlands.
Yes, you are the Netherlands. I'll leave that in the middle.
We will all make our conclusions ourselves.
Yes. No hard feelings. No hard feelings.
Yeah, absolutely no. So we are going to talk about working with dyslexia today, working with neurodivergent students. And you also mentioned that you are dyslexic yourself and you found it out randomly,
Yes.
right?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I would say define randomly. I realized about my own dyslexia about 7-8 years ago when I started working in the field of dyslexia.
Okay.
And I knew that it was that I had ADHD traits, so that had been with me for a long time, and people had told me, "Oh my God, you're ADHD" and stuff.
So there have
But
been
it was,
signs.
yeah, there have been certain signs, but I never thought they were true. I was, yeah, no, I'm just very active, and my attention just goes from one place to the other, and I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then when I started working in the field of dyslexia, I started researching through an international project that I was a member of, and that's when I realized, most of all speaking to dyslexic students and adults, and speaking to Senkos and to other specialists and diagnosticians, when I said, like, yeah, but you're describing me. You're describing my life. This is my brain. I have very similar experiences in school myself. So that's when I got more in touch with it, and discussing it with Senkos and diagnosticians. They said, well, if you want, you can get an official diagnosis, but yes, it is very, 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 very extremely likely that you are at least, well, mild dyslexic, not very dyslexic, mild dyslexic. So yes, and I must say that for me it was a complete eye opener. It answered a lot of questions, and it was a big relief as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
when you know what exactly is happening,
Yes.
it helps you put like a label on it,
Yeah.
tuck it
I
away.
used to I used to consider myself as partially stupid, honestly,
Yeah.
because there were things in school, at college, and in life in general that I would just not grasp, that I would just not
Okay.
understand. In language
Okay.
learning, for instance, I would not understand grammar,
Hmm.
um, and in other parts of life, there were the things that I just don't get it. You know that you
Yeah.
get. I'm sorry, but I just don't get it. I must be stupid. I must be dumb.
Right.
And then I realized that no, it's not that I'm, because there were other things in life that I would be, and still am, very good at, and I would
Yeah.
get and I would excel at. So I said, so like it's not that I'm not intelligent, because I know that I am, well, at least moderate intelligence. Let's keep it that way. But at least I'm not unintelligent. And then I said, well, now I know why, because my brain basically just processes information in a different way. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it reminded me, I once had a student who always said, I may not be smart, but I'm not stupid.
Yeah, beautiful, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of learning languages, you also mentioned not understanding grammar and things like that. How does it work from your perspective, or from perspective of a potential student? Is it that the concepts do not click together? Is it harder to see connections between things, or is it just because this is like a more logical kind of information? So, can you shed light on that
Yeah.
thing?
I always, to start with, I believe, I have a strong belief. There's no proof of this, but I have a strong belief that dyslexic learners can become more fluent in a spoken language. I'm not so talking about written language, but in the spoken language than non-dyslexic learners. So that's my belief.
Yeah.
Um, but saying that, I always, I understand language as something that is logical. So there is a logic behind language, just like a philosophical logic behind any language, because otherwise the language wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Because language exists for us to communicate, and we have to find the most logical way to communicate. And this is also the reason why language is alive, and why language evolves. And if you would use the English that we're using on, or that's being used nowadays, and we would like time travel like 3 centuries back, which is like nothing in
Yeah.
human revolutions. But even less than 3 centuries back, maybe a century and a half back, you would
Uh-huh.
travel to London or Oxford or anywhere in the UK, and you would start speaking to people with the language that we speak right now, and people would look at you and go like,
Exactly.
what? I really don't understand. And we would
Yeah.
understand them either. So language is evolving, and
True.
then it used to be logical for them in their perspective, and now it is logical for us. And there is different ways to explain language as well, and that's where I want to go. There's
Yeah.
different ways to understand the logic behind the language, and
Yeah.
it's only one of the ways to understand that logic is explaining it with grammar rules, is,
Yeah.
is, is putting it in boxes, making rules for it that are
Yeah.
very rigid, and this is the way that language works. And this is how we teach languages. This is how the vast majority of us teach language. But we
That's
don't
true.
and
That's
we
true.
don't we forget about the fact that language has also to do with intuition. And the
It's
beauty
it is.
is, the dyslexic brain is a very intuitive brain.
Okay.
So what you were saying before, you were saying about connecting the dots. The dyslexics, we are very good at connecting the dots, but,
Hmm.
but we do this in a completely different way. So for us, it's
Okay.
it's seeing this logic. It is maybe even feeling this logic behind language. So knowing when something is right and isn't, and
Okay.
not being able to explain it. What you say, why is it? It is. Yeah, but why? I don't know. It is. It feels right. It sounds right. I know it's right. And that is a power that dyslexics have, but it's not linked to grammar. So if you explain a language, and you base basically everything is based on grammar rules and grammatical structures, and explaining grammar, for, for me as a dyslexic person, it just like boom over my head. I mean,
Okay.
if even the other day, I did an interview with someone, and it was about a Spanish exam, Spanish language exams. It was for a web very similar to yours, but for people that want to learn Spanish. as well. And they showed me some examples, and in the initiation of the exercise, it had a grammar in there, grammar vocabulary in there, and it was low levels. And I said to him, I said, honestly, guys, I said, by only reading the prompt, I'm already lost because
Hmm.
it's got too difficult words in it for me. And this is
Okay.
when I sound stupid again, because I just don't understand these words. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And I do find this a lot with dyslexic learners when I speak to them and I say, what is your, I ask them, what is the main problem for you in learning languages? They say, I don't see the grammar. And they
Okay.
don't even say I don't understand the grammar. Many of them say I just don't see the grammar.
Okay. They don't see the rule and how rule is applied to different contexts and to different. Yeah. So
The
for them,
dyslexic,
it's words that work together, and it's not that there is a single rule that will explain it. There are different ways you can explain things and connect them.
there's a rule. They know there's a rule, and there's somewhere how this works, but they just can't explain it. They just know it works.
Hmm.
The dyslexic brain is a very visual brain as well,
Yeah.
and visual thinkers are usually much faster in their thinking than verbal thinkers. So verbal thinking goes at a certain pace, but
Hmm.
visual thinking goes like maybe 1,000 times faster. That's, I mean, they say um, words, no, pictures or images are more than 1,000 words, and
Yes.
there's a reason for it because they really are. An image really is more than 1,000 words.
Hmm. Okay. So if we go back a bit to the fact that the language is evolving and not a fixed thing, a rigid thing, because that's what we usually say. Well, this is the rule, and the rule is the law, and we just adhere to it, and that's it. Um, you said that if you went back to like 200 centuries ago, London, it would be different. My favorite example is that I always tell my students is that we don't have double negation now, but we used to. And language is invented by people for people. So there was a guy who just said, well, I don't really like it.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
let's cancel it. So he
Yes,
wrote an article. I don't remember his name, but he wrote an article and everybody went ahead with it. So he
yes.
said double negation cancels itself out. So it doesn't work. So let's remove it. But if you read Geoffrey Chaucer, there is triple negation.
Well, and it's the same language.
It's the same
Yeah.
language. So
So
language is
language evolves.
alive, it's
Yes.
flexible, it
Yeah.
evolves. Grammar is not a finite set of rules that exists, in the universe and it's never going to change. It's always changing, it's always evolving, and you
Yeah.
don't have to be so rigid. So,
Yeah.
okay, and I think we're slowly moving on to this second question. How do you recognize this in your student? How do you recognize that they might have this special need?
Yes, well, that's a very good question. Not very easy to answer because I could spend hours. Actually, in the
Yeah.
trainings I do, this is usually 4 hours. Um, but
No, we're only touching up on this,
well,
obviously,
exactly.
in this
Yeah, no, no, no.
large
I no, but
familiarizing.
I usually and one of the one of the things is that you would usually label your neurodivergent or specifically your dyslexic and ADHD student in a different way. So it's very likely, and this is true. I've heard this over and over and over again, also from dyslexics. It's very likely for you to label your dyslexic student as lazy, as unmotivated, as disruptive, as a class clown, as anything but intelligent and well behaved and a good student. So this is one, and then two. So if you see a student behaving a little bit lazy, a little bit off, and maybe this is just in your class with your subject and not another subject, that might be a thing. The main the main red flag, if that's what we're looking for, the main red flag for me is unexpectedness. It's the discrepancy between what a student can produce in writing and what a student can produce in speaking. So if you ask a student to write, so in writing, to write an essay about their hobby, for instance, and what you get back from your student is poorly written, poorly structured, bad grammar, simple grammar, strange slash almost stupid spelling mistakes, definitely not spelling mistakes for that level. Very simple, repetitive vocabulary. That stuff that you go like, honestly, this student B1, maybe we should put him down to A2, because
Okay.
this is what he can produce. And then with even with that essay in your hand, you say to the student, sit down. Well, please sit down. You invite him to sit down, and you say, hey, by the way, what is your hobby? And then you do the same thing, or maybe you take him off guard another day. You say, tell me about your hobby. And all of a sudden, that student rattles away and starts talking and this and that and grammatical structures and idioms. All of it, you go, like, whoa, where did that idiom come from? I didn't see that idiom in the essay, and vocabulary and rich vocabulary and even good prosody. And you go like, wow, it almost sounds like real English, what that student's doing, like
Okay.
proper English. And you see that amazing difference, that discrepancy between the spoken level and the written level. That's like an
Okay.
enormous big flag in front of you.
So it is not exactly tied with him or that with them talking about something they are excited about, because you mentioned hobby. So it's not necessarily about, them talking about something that they find exciting. It's just them talking.
Yes, it's a discrepancy between what the student can produce in writing and what the student can produce in speaking.
Right.
It's the
Right.
same. It's the same, for instance, with, I mean, this is for English teachers, right? But I work with mainstream teachers as well, and maybe there's a biology teacher, and I say to biology teacher, I say, listen, if you hand out an exam to your students and you get that written exam back, and you see the results of that student, and then you take the student aside and you ask the exact same questions.
Uh-huh.
Ask the exact same questions, and you ask him to answer them verbally,
Yeah.
and then you record that. Yeah, and then you compare the two results. If there's a huge difference, which it probably will be if the student's dyslexic, that's your discrepancy. It's the discrepancy model, actually, what they call it.
Right.
But
Okay. Okay. So that's the main red flag, the main
yes,
signal with
and
this.
now
Obviously, there will be more.
it's a beauty thing briefly, because you touched on something very important here as well. You said if they are passionate about something, the
Yeah.
beauty, or actually the important thing with this is where all neurodivergent students, so this is dyslexics, ADHD, autism as well. If it is something they're passionate about, if it's something they like, they can relate to,
Hmm.
will they learn? Oh, yes, they will learn. And they will put everything in there. If it
Yeah.
is something that they cannot relate to, if it is something that this is really nothing to do with me,
Yeah.
there's not little motivation. There's no motivation. So it's null. It is almost it's physically impossible for them to get started to do something. And this is true physical. It has to do with the brain, with the chemistry in the brain. There
Yeah.
is no chemistry in the brain for them to get started on something that they are really not interested in.
Okay. So then this leads us obviously to how do you adapt the
Yeah,
classroom? How do you adapt the curriculum to um, interest them, to give them this space for expressing, learning? The first thing you mentioned is find something they're passionate about. So
yeah,
you tie it into their interests, you ask them about what they like doing and things like that. What else? And how do we teach grammar? Because we do need to teach grammar after all, in
yeah.
a way.
Very good question. There's many strategies you can use in the classroom, but a few of the strategies. First of all, make it relatable to the students. So
Hmm.
make it in their life. Put English in their own experience in their life, so they can see. Dyslexics are very good at seeing the big picture. They're very good at overseeing situations. So if you hand them something in a big picture, so in
Yeah.
a context, it is easier for them to process the information. Also, the grammar. So if you embed the grammar in a story, instead
Hmm.
of instead of putting it into individual lines, if it is in a
Yeah.
story, then it makes more sense to me, and then I can, because then I, with my dyslexic thinking brain, i can see I can see the connections, and i can
Okay.
and i can see what's happening here. And if you do that without giving me grammar rules per se,
Hmm.
so you give me the text without the
Hmm.
rules, but you highlight where you want me to look. So you highlight the important things, you highlight the grammar basically for me
Yeah,
without
yeah.
explaining me anything about the grammar. And
Okay.
I can see what's happening, and I can, because there's a pattern. Grammar is a pattern. Grammar is explaining a linguistic pattern. That's it.
Yeah.
But my brain can see that pattern. I go, oh, hey, there's a pattern here. And
Okay.
I process this, and maybe I play around with this, and it's play, make it playful, play around with it,
Yeah.
and how would the next one be, and what would this look like, and what would oh,
Yeah.
and then you as a teacher can see, oh, now he's got the pattern. Now the
Yeah.
pattern is engraved in his
Yeah.
neurons, no, in his brain,
So,
and then maybe I will explain the grammar rule. And then,
okay.
by the way, the rule is this. Can you see? Oh, okay. Oh, now I see this happening.
Right.
Because in my brain, I already understand this. And now I put words to what I can see in my brain. And then at the very end, I will say, by the way, the label of this grammar rule, what we call this is, and then put the name to it. Yeah.
But could you ask your students to explain the rule?
Oh, yeah. Why not? Of
Okay.
course.
Because this sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, this sounds very much like guided discovery approach to me.
It is.
It
It
is.
is. It is.
It
It
is.
is. It is. Discover the language yourself. You
Yeah.
as a student discover the language, and
Yeah.
and as a teacher you help them in the process of discovery of
The
of
inductive,
that
yeah.
language. Yes, yes. And then that's one thing. There's much more that you can do. it's
Of
it's
course.
it's it's breaking your class up in smaller chunks. It is adapting your material. It is using maybe different fonts, it's different styles, etc. There's a lot
So
you can
there
do.
is a visual element to it as well, using
Oh
different fonts, different colors,
yes, it is
pictures.
how you
I assume it has to be very like a lot of visual aids as well.
Yes, it is how you position the information on the page or on the screen if it is online
Hmm.
material. It is your use of colors. It is your use of different fonts. Also, the font you use.
Okay.
So anything which is not serif, which is sans serif, is usually a good font. Serif
Okay.
fonts like
Okay.
Times New
That's the one we
Roman.
have on Amazy. Sans
Times
serif.
That's it. Anything which is sans serif. And Times New Roman, for instance, which is used a lot in newspapers and
Yeah.
in scientific articles. And I
Yeah.
do read a lot of scientific articles for my work, obviously.
Yeah.
For me, it's a complete nightmare. It
So the
really is a
serifs, they
nightmare for me.
distract you, all
Yes.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
Okay.
not that you can't. I mean, maybe in some cases, in severe cases, it is that you can't read.
Yeah.
But in mild cases like mine, it's not that I can't read it, but it really slows me down.
Hmm.
So compared to a neurotypical reader, which probably like you, I am a very slow reader, and
Yeah.
I
Okay.
might take at least maybe I read at half the pace or slightly over half the pace that other people read around me. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. You also mentioned positioning things on the page.
yeah.
Is there a certain way you have to position it, or does it depend? Is it different for every?
I don't think it's much about the position. It's maybe not the positioning on the page as in putting it on the top, on the bottom, or in the middle, or something like that. It's more about how the relation between the information on the page. So, and it's all about whiteness, about the blank space. Uh,
Hmm.
I always say that we like to save paper, we like to save ink, we like to save uh, the nature, preserve the nature. So we like to put as much information as we can on one A4 and then hand it out to our
Yeah.
students. And you can see situations where maybe you cramp 10 questions on one A4, maybe 10
Hmm.
multiple choice questions, and they're so together. There's no space between the questions that you could have a student reading question one.
Without them seeing question two.
No, 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 no. This is even worse.
Sorry. Sorry.
Reading question one, looking away for the answer, like thinking about the answer, then looking back, and then not remembering where they were, and then their eye goes to somewhere else on the paper,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
they read answer to C, and they go like, yeah, that's plausible. Yeah, I think that's the correct one, and then they circle answer to
Just because
C
at random.
as the answer to question one. you know And mind you, and this is not even random because, and I explain this to teachers in my training as well, because dyslexics we have the ability to, because we have this this broad vision, this capability of thinking out of the box and to see the big picture and to connecting dots, we are able to see connections between question 1 and answer 2C. So we
Yeah.
could even go back to the teacher and say, no, but it is right
Yeah.
because, and then if you as a teacher would have an open mind, you would go like, yeah, maybe you're right. If you look at it that way.
Okay.
And you would probably say, well, if you look at it that way, that's
Hmm.
well. If you look at it that way, if you look at that, but the student would say, yeah, but that's the way I look at it. That's how my
Yeah.
brain works. So no, it is. So that's why if you hand out activities, if you do this, make sure that if you in an exam or an activity, make sure that everything's together, like the question and the answers are together, and there's separation between 1 and 2 and 3, and maybe even put it
Okay.
in a box. Because
Okay.
if you put it in a box, in a closed box, so like
Right.
literally a closed box, um, visually, what you're saying to the student's brain, everything within this box, in these boundaries, goes together,
Uh-huh.
and everything
Okay.
that's out of these boundaries doesn't belong here.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the beauty is that if you do this for all your students, everyone will benefit. So also your
That sounds true.
non-neurodivergent students will benefit from
Yes.
this.
Yes. Bulu, we have a few questions from
Yes, I
our
see Emmy
viewers. So the
Sweeney has a
first
question
one,
here.
yeah, I've already we've seen the first comment from Anthony Green is that
Yes,
as teachers, I think we perhaps don't often give enough credit or space to our students' amazing intuition, which is true. Just
yes,
ask questions. Always ask more questions.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let them discover it. And then there is a question here as well. Have you tried getting dyslexic students to write an essay using Google Voice instead of a pen and paper?
Yes, no, absolutely. Assistive technology, which is
Assistive
this, which
technology.
is text to speech,
Yeah.
no, text to speech
Speech.
or speech to text. Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes both ways. It
Yeah.
works well. You will probably have to train your students how to do this. I use a lot speech to text. So when I have to write for my work, I write scripts for my videos, etc. I use a lot of speech to text, and it's good because it also um, it forces you to think before you speak, and it forces you to pronounce correctly. So absolutely, yes, it's a very, very valuable asset. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. There is another comment. It wasn't until my niece went to university as a 35-year-old mature student that her dyslexia was discovered. I feel educators need more training, better understanding, and students perhaps mandatory testing. Um, so I don't know if I understand it correctly. I think she means that students, or he means that students have to be tested for dyslexia or ADHD. Okay. Well, do you think that's true?
I, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
This is literally, this is my quest. So I always say I'm on a I'm like a knight on a quest, and I'm not a knight, but I feel I'm on a quest of doing this, and what she says about her niece, you hear this over and over and over again. There's a beautiful, if you're interested in the topic, just Google Steven Spielberg dyslexia interview, and there's an interview with Steven Spielberg where he explains that in his 60s, Steven Spielberg in his 60s realized he was dyslexic, and he's got a
Yeah.
he's got a very dyslexic brain. He went like, now I know why this and that and such and
It's
so and so on.
incredible.
And yes, educators need more training. They need to know about this. I've spoken to trainers, to university teachers who teach our future teachers, and then they say, no, but we do teach about neurodivergence. And I say, oh yeah, how much or when? And I said, yeah,
One
well,
hour.
in the second year, in the second term, in the fourth week, we do this one day, half an hour, or maybe an hour and a half. And I go like, wow. So out of a 4-year degree, you spent like 3 hours
Yeah.
talking about 20% of the population.
Yeah.
And I say, do you see what's happening here? And actually, beauty is, and because I do a lot of training, and I remember last summer I was at a face-to-face training in Portugal. I had a group of 80 teachers in front of me, and one of the teachers, after day one, she stood up and luckily with a smile on her face, she said, "Boelo, you make me feel bad. I'm angry at you. You make me feel bad." And I said, "Why?" And
As
she
a
said,
teacher.
"As a teacher." And she said, "I've been teaching for 30 years. And this," she said, "this, what you're telling me right now, this should have been told to me 30 years ago." And
Hmm.
that's it. And to just to wrap up what Sandy said, the testing, if it were possible, the screening at least would be amazing. But I think that teachers are not there to diagnose or to test, officially test students. But I do think that teachers should be there to recognize the signals, to recognize the signs of possible dyslexia, ADHD, autism, etc., and then being able to redirect these students to another department in their school or something else, and
Yeah.
at least start working with these students and start adapting your classes and helping them. And what you asked as well, what can teachers do? I always say the first thing that any teacher should do is be empathetic about it and sit down with the student and say, "Hey, I hear you're dyslexic or ADHD, autism. I know that this has an influence on your language learning. What can I do to help you?" That's it.
Yeah.
And if you give that to a student, that already takes a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety away, and will open their eyes, and then the rest is a beautiful journey together.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. One more question. Um, Anthony Green asks, if a dyslexic learner finds a grammar pattern, will they tend to ask questions about the pattern, or will they prefer to rely on the teacher to come up with the questions? Or doesn't depend on a person?
I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So look at the pattern with your students.
Yeah, that maybe the dyslexic might say, "Oh yeah, I can see this happening, I can see that happening,"
Yeah.
or they say, "I don't see what's happening here," and then you will maybe have to guide them a little bit further and say, "Can you see
Hmm.
what's happening here, here, here?" But if they're dyslexic, I'm pretty sure they will go like, "Oh yeah, I see what's happening here. I can see
Hmm.
this. I can
Hmm.
understand this now." I can tell you that I have met dyslexics with amazing levels of spoken English, but really amazing levels of spoken English that you would really think, and I'm thinking especially of one friend of mine from Italy, and I really thought that one of her parents was a native speaker. So she had been brought up
Okay. Just a native
in
level.
a
Hmm.
native. That I always say you were brought up in a bilingual environment, and
Yeah.
she said, "Nope, both parents are Italian. They don't speak any English. Have never ever been to the UK myself or an English speaking country either, and I've seen more dyslexic like that."
Yeah.
And I'm 100% convinced that it's because they have approached the language learning from that more intuitive side of the right hemisphere of the brain.
Right. So with proper care, with proper nurturing, they can achieve incredible
Yeah.
levels and
Yes.
incredible success.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a lot of wonderful comments here. Some of them are just about thank you for sharing this information. Absolutely, thank you for
My
coming.
pleasure. My
We,
pleasure.
we, we, we are a bit running out of time. We still have to talk about your projects as well. So let me just show a few comments here about the children that might have missed many opportunities because of this. And yes, this is what you do. You try to give these opportunities to
Good
people.
for your niece, Sandy. Good for your niece.
Yes.
Congratulations to her. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. We also have a question about would a person as an HR feel bad, or probably how would they feel screening small text on the CV? I think this is all very automated these days, or becoming very automated. Honestly, I can answer this myself. Very few human eyes see the CVs you send in
Yeah.
to the HR. So this
Probably
problem is
machine.
going away.
Yeah.
No human has touched your
but
CV
but
in a
but,
long
but
time.
Gaia, what she's touching on something very important here because neurodivergence. I mean, we're talking about neurodivergence in education, but neurodivergence in the workplace is something completely. It's huge as well, and something completely different. Yeah, and very very important.
Yeah, yeah. Right, so let's move on to talking about your projects and how our teachers can learn more about working with dyslexia, working with neurodivergence. You have a book that you've published, you have a course. and you also have a masterclass. Can you tell us a little bit about these things?
Yes. So I started last year. I started writing this book, this ebook, teaching languages to students with dyslexia, which is downloadable from my website. Um, had enormous success. I've had a lot of since I published it, over a couple of thousands downloads already. Teachers from all over the world. Then I did a masterclass, which is almost like a tasting menu. Like if you go like, well, I want to know something about dyslexia, but I won't dive into it too much. By all means, take the masterclass. I think it's only 20 euros, so it's definitely worth the money. And then I moved on to the Dyslexia Smart Teacher Program. And the Dyslexia Smart Teacher Program is where I take teachers and also whole schools as well. But here I take teachers and I take them through the whole process of understanding dyslexia and ADHD, being able to recognize it in their students, being able to adapt their teaching strategies and how they organize also the physical space of their classroom to accommodate their neurodivergent students, how to adapt material, how to change, how to create their own material and make it dyslexia and ADHD friendly. Also, how to communicate about this, because many teachers come to me and say, yeah, but how do I speak to the parents? What do I say to the parents when I realize possible dyslexia in my students? What do I say to other teachers? What do I do in the classroom? What do I say to the other students? How can I make this into a learning environment where this student isn't being bullied by the rest, you know? And also, how can I motivate this student? How can I elevate their self-esteem? Because they come to us with a very, very low self-esteem. So all that emotional intelligence is very important there as well. And then we end that program with other neurodivergences as well. So also ADHD, as I said before, autism, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, etc. One module on that. So it's a very, very complete program, which you can either take without live sessions, so just all asynchronous. That's going to be ready in a couple of months. But I literally this week started a hybrid program, which is all this, which is about 6 modules plus 3 live sessions with me as well, in very small groups, usually about 6 to 8 or 9 participants from all over the world. And I literally started my first cohort this week, and it's amazing. I've got 43 teachers between the groups signed up, and so far the reactions are amazing. Next week are the live sessions, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But people, by all means, go on the website. You can sign up for the next cohort already, and that's going to be probably in April. April,
Okay.
May, something like that.
Okay.
So.
If you scan the QR code, you will be taken to the page for the Dyslexia Smart Teacher Program. But from there, you can access all the other tools. You can access the ebook, you can find the masterclass, and just read more about what Boelo does and all the other projects he has participated in and
Yes,
and
yes.
organized.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming, Boelo.
Thank you
it
very much
was
for this opportunity.
it was eye-opening. It was incredible. Always exciting to talk to you.
Thank you.
What was it in my power? I would not stop this, just like keep talking to you. But we have to stop, of course. And there are a lot of fantastic words. A lot of people are thanking you for coming and sharing. So yes,
Thank you. And
thank you.
we can do it again whenever you like. I'm happy to be back.
I remember that. Okay, thank you one more time. Bye, Bilo.
Thank you. Bye bye.
So we here today are finished, and I will just remind you one more time that on Monday you can join Nick Peachy to watch a webinar on how to use Amazy.uk, an interactive digital workspace for educators. He will go into to tell you about all the different tools we have and how they can be used, how you can create interactive materials. Now I'm curious to see how I can adapt my own materials to be more inclusive. And actually, what I heard today may help. So, we are going to make a little post about all the outcomes of what we've discovered today. And of course, don't forget to check out everything Boelo has created. So, the ebook, the Smart Dyslexia Smart Teacher Program, and other things on his website. Thank you for coming. See you again in a few weeks, and have a great day.